the Senate Finance and Appropriations Public Safety Subcommittee. Today we do a deeper dive into the introduced budget for the Secretaries of Veterans and Defense Affairs, the Virginia Alcohol Beverage Control Authority, or ABC Board, and the Department of Emergency Management. We appreciate newly appointed Secretary Craig Crenshaw being here today to walk us through the governor's budget proposals. We will then hear from Travis Hill. Travis, I think you're right behind me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
CEO of ABC on their budget recommendations, as well as an update on the Commonwealth's alcohol beverage sales. As you all know, most of the ABC net profits are transferred to the general fund for appropriations, in addition to designated transfers to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and other agencies. Finally, State Coordinators Shaw, Talmadge, will provide an update on the Department of Emergency Management, COVID-19 response, as well as their budget priorities. If the time allows, staff will provide an overview of the governor's introduced budget. Otherwise, staff will present next week. And before I turn the presentation over to Secretary Crenshaw, I will ask staff to call the roll.
Senator Lucas?
Here.
Senator Norment? Senator Ruff?
Here.
Senator Edwards?
Here.
Senator Peterson? Senator Marsden?
Here.
Senator Eben? All right.
Secretary Crenshaw, welcome. You may begin your presentation.
First of all, good morning, Madam Chairman. I really appreciate this opportunity and other members of the committee to be here. This is a pretty exciting time, and just as like most Marines, when we go place, we like to have people that aside us to know where our left and right flanks are. I have some folks here with me. My agency, who's here to assist as well. I'm not sure if you all have the opportunity to meet our Deputy Secretary, and that's Jason Pock. He's here with me. And then we have, certainly, many of you know Major General Williams, our TAG, and who's not presently here is our Commissioner of the DVS, Daniel Gade. However, we do have a representative, Steve Combs, here as well to address some of those questions there. So I think I have my fire team here with me.
I think so. I think one of your flanks is right behind you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm saying. They're here.
Okay.
One is not here, but I just want to let you know who's all in the room. But right, Colonel Williams, or General Williams, he's here.
I just want to make sure that I associate these names with the faces with the names now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, so I think my deputy,
Yes.
okay, General Williams,
Yes.
and Steve Combs.
Yes. Thank you. So now I know who to call.
Yes, ma'am. So this, as I mentioned, this is a very exciting time, and what we're going to talk about really is how we see the way forward within the Secretariat. We'll talk about the budget and which that has been delivered previously, but I think with the time spent here, I like to just kind of share the energy and how we want to go forward, and what we look at putting our focus of efforts on that really nesses with the budget itself. As we started out with the new administration, is what is that you want to do? What is that makes Virginia the place for veterans? One of the tasks that I've received, and really one that resonates with me, is let's make Virginia the state in the country where veterans want to stay. Oh, by the way, we're veterans who are no longer in the state want to come back too. And so how do you do that? And so what we're going to talk about, at least what has been laid out, is those things that allow us to get back to or get to that position. Many of the folks who talks about, what makes a state great for veterans, we talk about all the benefits, taxes, and all of that, and which makes sense. But at the end of the day, you look at who is that state out there that we're trying to match. You look at North Carolina, Texas, Arizona, Florida. Those are states that really are competitive with their veterans. And so we want to be better than that. We want to be just as good and better. And so how do you do it? So right now we have about, as many of you know, about 700,000 service members and families that reside in the state of Virginia. And that's a large number of people. And they're here, and that number can grow. And the reason I know it can grow because on an annual basis, about 20,000 military leave the service in Virginia. Out of that 20,000, about 10,000 remain in the state. And so we want to keep every member that leaves into the state. So we want that 10,000 to become 20,000. And then again, we want those folks who are Virginia residents to come back to Virginia, who are, were part of Virginia at some point, to come back. What was also interesting is that when I was told that, and said, Crenshaw, you're going to be the guy for Veteran Affairs, and some of my friends understood what all that meant. First thing he said, well, what about our taxes? How can you help us with taxes? And we know the story behind that in terms of what it means and how you do that. But that is so advertising to our veterans on being able to stay in a state which they love and also get the tax relief that they and we believe they deserve. I think at the end of the day, no matter what we do, no matter how hard, how long we drive and strive, I don't think we could ever do enough for our veterans because it's just important that what they've done and their contributions. So when I speak of veterans, and we speak of veterans, it's not just the individual person who wears a uniform, it's their families and their, the spouses, and how do we address some of the issue with their spouses being able to have hiring preferences, et cetera. So again, the idea here is that we're going to create a Virginia that welcomes veterans, take care of the veterans and their families. And part of the way we're going to do that, we're going to use our transformation office. We have a new position within the cabinet where we're chief of transformation. And that is going to be part of our process in terms of what is it we need to do, how can we do it better to advertise what Virginia offers. So really the slogan becomes, why not Virginia, as military service member decide to lead a force. We have to tell our story better. There's a lot of things that's currently going on within Virginia that supports our veterans, and I don't think the visibility is out there on how that needs to should be addressed, at least advertised. And so part of our initiative is to create a somewhat of a campaign to tell our story, and again, that's still part of that momentum of wanting to maintain or at least get to a level where Virginia is the number one state. But in order to do that, we have to measure what we do, okay? Metrics are important to us. And so every dollar, everything that we do, we have to put against a metric and how well we're performing. And so everything that's going to be laid out, it has been laid out, we bring it back to some key performance indicators. Are we doing what we need to do? Because you can throw a lot of money at stuff, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but you need a way to measure it. And so our approach as we go forward is how do we measure everything we do in supporting our veterans and their families. And we're going to have some key performance indicators that allow us to do that. And this crosses all our agencies from our DVS and our military affairs as well. And so as I look at those agencies, within those agencies, they have programs, they have initiatives, that, again, that nests into making Virginia the number one state. As I look at our military affairs, which is headed by General Williams, and the things that are important to us is our National Guard. How do we ensure our National Guard, that we keep our National Guard members, that we're able to meet recruitment lines, and how do we give them incentives for referral programs? If they, recommend someone to come into the National Guard, the Guard competes with all the other services. And so what is that we need to do and how we need to do it in a better way, more deliberate way to maintain a very active guard, make sure that training is done as well as their funding on a number of their initiatives. Most of the attention when it comes to veteran affairs really looks into what happens in the Department of Veteran Services. This is where all the benefits are lying. And so if there's any visibility, when someone talks about VA or veterans, that's really what they're looking at. And so we're going to pay close attention to DVS. As we talk about being able to address some of the shortage in personnel, being able to really establish some new offices in places where we're definitely going to need them in the future. So that's a roundup, wrap-up, if you will, of the approach that we're going to take within the Secretariat to make Virginia the number one state in the country where our veterans, our families, the military families want to be a part of. And there are going to be initiatives, and some have already been talked to, but we're going to push that envelope even further because We just don't want to be equal. We want to be better. And I'm going to ask you to help us to that vein, and certainly we'll have all the right conversations for that. So if you look at the budget that's being presented today, it's the budget that was delivered by the last administration with a $9 million amendment that Governor Youngkin put in. And so I thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to do that. And so what that,
Norman?
Let's get a little more granular on some of this stuff. On the introduced budget, it looks like to me that there were 15 FTEs, and 23, 15, and 24. Then the current governor, on his amendments, looked like he upped it to 33 and 33. Is that right?
is that for the,
I'm looking at the FY 23, 24, maybe page 2 of your slide.
okay. No, so that's over the 4-year period. It's not a 30-30. It's a, that 15 will be drawn down during the first year, but it's kind of laid out as if it was a requirement for 30 FTEs. So it's not it's a total of 15 FTEs. That's the bottom line. The way it's just kind of laid out suggests that maybe it's for 2 or a total of 30, but it's really, you start off with 15, and next year that will probably go down to something less than that 15 number. Just a matter of semantics.
The governor's amendments were 33. Governor Youngkin's amendments operating FY 23. There you go. Thank you for
Right.
You want to get back?
Okay, yeah, sure, maybe I can get back with you on that. But I think within that 9 million, what we was talking about, I kind of talked to earlier, that's the staffing shortage that we have throughout the state with our VSOs and so many offices. So that's where that number there comes from. But I can get back with you more detail on that. So what I would do now, Madam Chairman, as the budget's kind of laid out, and I recognize the time, we can go to line, which line I'd like to address, but certainly I have the right folks here to go into more detail of that. So I'll stand by and wait if there's any additional question, go in a particular line.
Thank you. Next speaker will be whom? Did you say you're going to have somebody else to speak now?
No, ma'am, so if there is any detailed question on the roll-up of the budget itself,
Okay.
which is on the actual roll-up itself, which is the page 2, but all the detail behind that, which is about, several tens of budget items that we can go through if that's something you want to do.
Members of the committee?
Yeah.
Senator Edwards?
Madam Chair, welcome. Nice to see you, Secretary.
Yes, sir.
How many veteran service representatives do we have now overall throughout the Commonwealth?
Okay. Steve, can you help with that?
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, Madam Chair, Mr. Senator, we have 34 benefit services offices and 75 VSRs in Virginia
75 altogether.
that are deployed on the street today, yes. We've got some vacancies that were hired, but 75 that are in the offices right now.
It was-
In the Roanoke area, there's some in the Paul Federal Building in Roanoke, downtown Roanoke, and also the Federal VA Hospital as well. Where are they located? I know that,
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Senator Edwards, those are in the POF building. That is what we call our Center of Excellence. So every claim before it gets submitted to the VA goes through our Center of Excellence for quality control. They're checking on all of the 34 offices. But you're correct, we also have an office in the Salem VA Medical Center, that area, and we can do direct assistance out of the POF building, but mostly the veterans are going to the Salem VA Medical Center.
Madam Chair, do you have, how many do we have in the Roanoke area, Salem and downtown Roanoke? Do you recall?
I'd have to get you, not sure, I have to get an exact number. I know we've got 2 at Salem, and there are, I would say at least 3 who work downtown in the POF building. Plus, you draw out a little bit more, you're getting into Withville. We're doing some itinerant service in Blacksburg, but I would say, the 5 and I can pin down if there's one area.
Madam Chair, and the governor wants to add to that, is that my understanding? As part of his budget proposal, the new governor?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, how many does he want to add altogether? I can't. Statewide.
Mr. Secretary, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, the governor, we don't have an exact number. What we've done is you'll see in the Governor Youngkin's introduced budget, we've proposed 10 new BSRs that will go into the high demand offices. We've identified some, but we don't have those pinned down yet.
Yeah.
You'll also see there's some specific office locations where they'll go, such as Fort Lee is one of our busiest offices. And then, Madam Chair or Senator, you'll see there's a proposal to start partnering with some of the the VSOs, the Veteran Service Organizations, which also have service officers, and how can we use some of that to basically increase our overall capacity statewide.
Okay, Madam Chair, so my understanding is demand is growing, is that right? For veteran service representatives to assist veterans, Virginia veterans, to get their federal VA benefits.
Yes.
Senator Edwards, that's exactly correct. And it's both a function of the demand growing for the initial claims filing. In the introduced budget, there's some money for the appeals attorneys because once you submit a claim, if the VA rejects it or makes an error on communication, you have to appeal it. That can be a difficult process. We've got an amazing staff that does that. So that function is growing because that demand is going. And then demand is also a function of locality and where you're located in the Commonwealth. And we want to be where the veterans are, so it's easy access. So when they come to their offices, we're easy, we're open, they're fine, and they get the services they need.
Madam Chair, I think these veteran service representatives are exceptionally important to attract veterans as well as to keep veterans and to serve Virginians who are veterans. And we have, I think, over 700,000 veterans here, in addition to those that are on active duty. Thank you.
Senator Marston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, on page 4, the $10 million to create a Virginia Military Community Infrastructure Grant Program. Could you tell me, I've read the description, what does that mean? What does it do?
Yes, sir. So that serves the military community for the infrastructure improvement. And this also benefits the partner military installation. That's the off-base, with some off-base projects. So it allows us to compete with some of the for the DoD grants that we ultimately have to match their grants. And also this gives the governor the discretion to grant funds to localities where within the military community where needed. So it's one where it's going to match some grant funds that are given by DoD, and the government has a pool where he can assist in matching those funds.
Madam Chair,
Senator Marston.
what's the example of what we're talking about here? Infrastructure is kind of a broad term.
Right.
What does it mean?
I think one of the examples, there could be roads that goes into the base, for instance, that the road may flood, and I think there's a couple areas down in the Hampton Roads area where the road floods during the heavy water. So the idea is being able to have that road repaired where it supports the local community as well as supporting military goes back and forth, use that road back and forth going onto the base. And so competing for grants to get that work done, and having to match grants that was given to the base, for instance, that we can now support them in that endeavor. So really, it's one being able to match funds that allow infrastructure locally that could best support both the base and within the communities.
Senator Peterson. Did I see you?
I'm just listening.
Okay. Senator Norman.
I appreciate some of the specifics that you're sharing, but when I just parenthetically hear so many veterans retiring to Florida, one, it's a tax structure, two, it's the weather. We can't do anything about the weather on it, but I've read some of the proposals, but what are your thoughts on sweetening the tax situation to make it more attractive for veterans to remain here? And I'm out of Hampton Roads, by the way.
Yes, sir. Sir, I know that the governor has laid out a plan, and we're supporting that plan. And we will see how that continues to develop. Certainly, whatever, we still want to be that #1 state. And so as we continue to develop this plan, and I look for areas for continued improvement, those options may be considered. But I know the governor's laid out right now, there's a 40,000 first on your retirement pay that will be tax-free.
Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Evan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The tax incentive or the tax free nature of the retirement pay that the governor's proposing, what is the total cost to, in terms of lost revenue that anticipates?
Yes, sir. I mean, that's a great question. We're working that now. I'm not prepared to answer that, but we recognize there's a physical impact across the board. And so part of our discussion is how do you do it in a very deliberate way and where it doesn't create undue, if you will, second, third order effects. But certainly, those type of conversations are being held right now, sir. So, but I can come back with you later to provide that to you.
And Madam Chair, just to follow up, I recognize that we want to be a good state for veterans to retire and maybe with some sort of incentive. But I also want to make sure that we can pay for that, and I don't think the governor's yet outlined how he would do that. So appreciate that in the future.
Madam Chair, just a friendly reminder for everyone to speak into their mic so the live stream can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the secretary? Then we want to thank you for your presentation
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
and look forward to seeing you at future meetings.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Now we want to hear from Travis Hill, CEO, ABC.
How come they can't keep whiskey on the shelves in Richmond?
Thank you all for coming.
Two in sale. So I would, and the claim specialist is claims, so they're certified.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I heard Senator Norman ask a question about why you can't keep whiskey on the shelves, but anyway, I'm sure you'll cover that somewhere in your presentation.
You said it's because Senator Marshall.
Yes, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Good morning.
Travis Hill, CEO for Virginia ABC. My team is on your six. Right behind you, I've got Chief Tom Kirby, Deputy Secretary of the Board Chris Curtis, and John Daniel, our Government Affairs Officer there. So,
Thank you.
Well, most of them pretty good.
Glad to have you here this morning.
so your packet has quite a bit of information in it. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible to respect your time. But there is a great deal to cover in terms of our operations and the revenues generated. I do want to note, it's been 4 years since we became an authority, so we, as an independent political subdivision, we've been able to have some greater flexibility and really a mantra to try to operate more as a business and keep an eye on how we operate and the efficiency in which we operate. I think we've returned some great results. One of those is something I'll talk about, the new distribution center and central office out on Pole Green Road in Hanover is now complete and operating. We have completely separated from Vita Services and our standalone and our own IT systems. And we've also been recognized throughout the country for some of the things we've done. We have a fully accredited law enforcement agency that's been recognized as the National Liquor Law Enforcement Agency of the Year twice. We've been recognized as the best control state last year. But even more broadly, we've been recognized as a top 100 retailer in 2019, 2020, and 21. So I think it's something Virginia should be proud of, is the system that we've been able to put together. It's been a challenging time for us the last 2 years. I think we've made some tremendous profits for the Commonwealth. I think some leaner times are ahead, and I'll get into that. But we are continuing to operate and ready to do so.
Okay.
The current state, we generated over $1.3 billion in revenues. transferred profits of $237 million. Our number of licensees is down. That is because of the pandemic. It's basically flat, went down by 50 or so, but
Understandably.
it's been a challenging time for them, and we've been working with them. Our expenses also went up. A lot of COVID expenses. We've had some additional pay actions, public health leave, cleaning, PPE, all of those things go into it. We've also launched a number of long-term projects that were funded, and so we're depreciating those, and that's hitting our expense number. But we've got a little over 4,800 employees currently. Trying to capture just what Virginia ABC does. It's not just about providing the liquid product. It's also about the money that's generated and what it goes to fund. I like to say we benefit all Virginians with the revenues that we have. In our calculations, it means about $151 in taxes doesn't have to be paid because of the profits that we generate going forward. We aren't just profit motivated, however. We do locate stores in areas through our rural location strategy to make sure that all citizens of the Commonwealth can access a store for their purchases. We've continued to grow our profits in the last 10 years. We've got grown profits by more than $100 million and added 150 stores. The chart that I'm showing now is just another representation of the revenue we've generated. What I will point out, and it'll be a theme throughout this presentation, is the growth in the alcohol beverage industry and purchases. All category types, spirits, beer, and wine, have all grown. Spirits has grown by the greatest percentage. That is kind of a trend right now, is that spirits is taking a larger percentage, but even wine and beer grew in these last few years more so than they had in years previous. Beer actually reversed a little bit of a shrinking trend, which was good for them to see. One of the major investments we've made as an authority is in our IT infrastructure. That's something that we focused on and worked with this committee and the committee in the House on that. You see there some projects that we've invested in: financial replacement, financial system replacement, point of sale replacement, and other things that enable us to operate in a more streamlined fashion. The graphical representation here kind of shows what we've accomplished. We had 13 out-of-date systems back in 2014. We're now down to 3. So that's been a tremendous reversal for us to be better in that area. The remaining 3 systems are fairly complicated systems. The HR system is actually 5 different homegrown systems. We do have funding to address that. Tax management's funded, and then we have e-commerce modernization in the budget decision briefs for you all this year. So we do have plans moving forward on those. What that means we've accomplished, the bars in red are those that the systems are out of useful life. We've kind of shared this with you over previous years where there was a lot more red on this page. So we've been able to trim that down, and we have programs in place to finish out those last remaining red bars. We do have a fully sworn law enforcement organization within Virginia ABC. Our philosophy is we're a regulatory authority with law enforcement powers. We focus on working with licensees, making sure they can comply with the laws, giving them the guidance that they need in order to operate. We also have a hearings division that hears violations for cases brought against licensees. I wanted to highlight 4 enforcement activities that we've undertaken. The first is replacement of our licensing system. That was funded in 2015. It's taken a long time to get there. We've launched it this year in January. Part of that is the complexity of the licensing system. The other part was license reform, which was instituted and is going into place this year as well. And then, quite frankly, COVID pushed us back a little bit as well. But that is bringing in 6 separate systems, primarily paper-based systems, combining those into one online system that should make it easier for Virginia ABC and our licensees to work with us. Some of the benefits will be 24/7 availability. So licensees can work on their applications when they would like to. They can have information at their fingertips from what is in their file, being able to look at hearings information. Our agents can access that information as well, just overall making it a more accessible system going forward. It gives us the ability to track the progress of an application, so an applicant can look and see, is it sitting with ABC, is ABC processing it, or has ABC asked me for something and I need to go in and upload that. One of the major factors in the license reform system, or excuse me, in the licensing system is license reform. That was legislation that was passed in 2020 that streamlined our licensing system from over, I think it was 150 licenses down to around 70 licenses. People did not lose license privileges. What we did was combine the license types together. And so one of the examples I like to use is you might have an on-off premises ABC license, but then they would have to go and get a keg permit, they'd have to go get a delivery permit. Sometimes they didn't know that, so they'd open their business and say, okay, I want to do delivery. So, well, now you got to go apply for a delivery permit.
Right.
What we've done is combine all that, so when you get an on-off license, you're going to get the keg permit, you're going to get the delivery permit. You don't have to use them, but you don't have to come back to us for that permit. It's there, it's accessible. I think it confirmed our thoughts in combining these things when COVID pandemic hit, because you had on-off licensees who didn't have a delivery permit. They were closed, they wanted to deliver, but they had to have a delivery permit. We were able to interpret our regulations in a way and look at the legislation that had been passed to say, hey, the policymakers in Virginia have said this is okay for them to be able to deliver, so we were able to provide some interpretation to get them into that place where they can deliver. But going forward, their license will have that, and they don't have to worry about getting some interpretation from us. This is just more on the system and what we're trying to do in terms of standardizing the systems. The other thing that I'll point out, we do have a marketplace license, which is a very broad category of license. You would be most familiar with, sometimes businesses will come to you for legislation to say, hey, I have an idea, I want to open a business and I want to be able to give away alcohol, or I want to be able to sell a very small amount of alcohol, and legislation would be written for that specific activity. The marketplace license is a very broad license that says, listen, if alcohol isn't your primary business, but you want it to be associated, we can give us what you're planning to do, and we can review it and issue you a marketplace license. So hopefully there won't be as many one-off licenses of people wanting to create specific things for, I mean, some of the examples that we had was a bespoke clothier license, art studio license, those types of things, so that they could give away alcohol. Enforcement's also focused on direct shipping. We are one of the major states that has direct shipping for wine primarily. Illegal shipping is a concern to us because that means it's not going through the wholesale and retail tier in Virginia, but it also means they may not be paying their taxes, which has a concern for you all. So we are doing more around enforcing how direct shipping is coming into Virginia, and we have made great progress in getting shippers licensed and reducing illegal shipments, and that's something that we'll continue to do. We did receive an appropriation last year to stand up a direct-to-consumer unit, and we are doing that now. Finally, public safety investigations. We do have the responsibility to conduct investigations where there's an act of violence that causes bodily injury or death at an ABC licensed establishment, and we continue to conduct those investigations. They are fairly resource intensive with a quick turnaround, but we do find that communities really appreciate it when we can address a licensee that is creating disruptions within their community and causing harm. On to retail operations. Really the theme here is omni-channel fulfillment. That means getting product to the customer wherever that customer wants it. So if it's in the store, if it's delivered to them, if it's curbside pickup, whatever that might be. A big part of the fulfillment there is the new warehouse and central office that I mentioned earlier. Our groundbreaking was in February of 2020. We cut the ribbon in that building in June of 21, so we built it throughout COVID. We did not have any project delays due to COVID. We actually were very fortunate in that we had locked in our building materials prior to COVID, so we did not see the escalation in costs that many capital projects have seen recently. It is a Commonwealth of Virginia-owned facility. It was funded through bonds. DGS performed the project management with us, and we procured it through a special turnkey approach that was unique to Virginia ABC as an authority. We did have some delays in standing up that facility. There was a month delay in making sure that we could load spirits into the facility in order to get a temporary certificate of occupancy. After that, we do have automation within the building. Technology doesn't always work as you want it to when you first plug it in, so we were dealing with that a little bit. So we did have a little bit of a late go live, which means we ran 2 warehouses together. That's challenging in any environment. It becomes especially challenging when you have product shortages because suppliers can't get you enough for one warehouse, and now you're saying we need it in 2 because we're shipping out of 2. That did create some challenges for us in the fall and early winter, but we now are fully in the new facility and shipping from that facility. So what does this give us going forward? It gives us 20 to 30 years in this new facility with additional capacity to ship, additional capacity to receive, the ability to fulfill e-commerce orders, shipping direct to home. So we are ready to meet a growing demand and are working with suppliers to make sure we maintain supply. The Hermitage Road facility is almost empty. We do have plans to be out of that product-wise by the end of March. There is language in the budget that property will be sold to VCU. We do anticipate closing that transaction this fiscal year. It is reflected in our profits this fiscal year, and that is a one-time growth. Yes, ma'am.
First, you said that this new facility is going to have a 20 to 30-year life. Is that typically the life of a facility of this nature?
It is. It's something. It is expandable, and that's something to keep in mind. Is we can add additional square footage, which will extend the life of it. So I think it can go well beyond that, but that's kind of the baseline at this point.
Thank you.
And this is just a picture of the central office, and then the central office and the warehouse facility. We are continuing to focus on store growth. We've got 395 stores. We added 6 stores in FY21. We have currently another 4 underway in Powhatan, Norfolk, Hanover, and Independence. And we're also looking at additional locations in Roanoke, Jonesville, and Winchester. So I talked about omni-channel fulfillment. E-commerce was something we were already looking at as a retailer. COVID accelerated that. We stood up curbside service in April of 2020 for customers who did not want to come into our store. We also wanted to do that in case we had to close stores. We could continue to fulfill orders even if they didn't come inside. From there, we went to overnight shipping, again, trying to make sure that we were accessible to our customers. And then most recently, in July of last year, we stood up on-demand delivery, which is same-day service through DoorDash. With regard to all of these delivery methods, what's important to us is making sure that the people receiving this alcohol are of legal age and can legally receive alcohol. So we have a great deal invested in carding, identification. We have processes set up with our shipper, UPS, as well as the DoorDash delivery for same day. There is legislation this year around third-party licensing of delivery companies. ABC did work on that effort. We think it's important that these companies get licensed so that they have skin in the game, if you will, in the alcohol beverage industry, that their folks are properly trained and know how to deliver this product
Madam Chair.
lawfully.
Senator Peterson?
Question, this is probably more for my personal benefit.
Yes, sir.
You all deliver kegs,
No, sir.
so it's just wine and spirits?
Yes, sir. We would deliver Virginia wine and spirits.
Why don't you deliver kegs?
We're not allowed to sell beer.
Oh, I guess that's total beverage. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. On-demand, we've gotten positive feedback with our on-demand services. The places to look at are customer service, as well as being able to order the products that folks want in their in the store, and I'll cover that on e-commerce proposal. So our profit transfers, direct your attention to the bottom 2 lines. There has been just exponential growth in our profits. $212 million in 20, $237 million in 21. I would not expect this growth to continue. It was 13% last year. That's about 3 years worth of growth in a normal year for Virginia ABC. So we are projecting the
People
amounts
were
to
at
go
home, they had to
down.
do something.
That's right. I would point out the FY22 amount does include that $14.7 million in that one-time property transfer, so that number is inflated a little bit. So we are projecting growth a little over 1%. Primarily, we just can't keep growing at the rate that we typically would. Licensee volume is up to about where it was pre-pandemic, but very uncertain given the state of business going forward. So talk a little bit about out-of-stocks. They are at an all-time high. I've got a couple charts to go through with you very quickly. This is a challenge from the suppliers having the product, the suppliers having the glass to put the product in, put a label on it, put a cap on it. Challenge for their workforce to load the truck, challenge for the workforce for the truck driver to drive from their facility to our facility. When it gets to our facility, we are ironing out the wrinkles in a new facility, so we are still figuring that out. We're also impacted by COVID. COVID staffing can impact us. It can severely decrease our productivity on a daily basis. And then we have to have truck drivers to drive that load to a store.
Sure.
You put all that together, you're going to see higher out of stocks. And we are getting better, but we are certainly continuing to be challenged by that. I would also say inflation is a concern to us.
Yes.
And I'll address that going forward. Overall, sales are favorable to forecast this year. We are a little bit ahead, about $19 million ahead. So that is the good news. What we are tracking, however, is we had a huge second half of the year last year. Our March, April, May, June numbers were over $100 million in sales, which is not typical for that time of year. So we're looking to see, can we do that again next year? That is the challenge. So this is just a chart representation of that performance, showing us ahead a little bit. We are a little bit behind right now in January, but we're continuing to deal with out of stocks and inflation are the two major concerns there. So when I presented on Monday, I used the analogy, I kind of feel like the LA Rams playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got a lead right now, but I know it's not safe. So we're going to keep working on that. I talked about out-of-stocks. This shows the last 3 years of out-of-stocks. The blue line is 2019. That shows a fairly typical year where you hover between 50 and 100 out-of-stocks, and it increases at the end of the year because of holiday volume and just not being able to keep up. What happened, the red line is 2020. You see we're following that typical trend line, and then the pandemic hits, and it goes vertical.
Yep.
And it's kind of stayed there for ever since. And so that's continuing to deal with those out of stocks. This was a map or a chart of our out of stock position November of last year to November of this year. Overall, our retail stores did drop to a little bit below 80% overall in stock. Our target's 98%. So we were out of stock. Again, that was kind of across the board: supplier shipping, 2 warehouses operating, COVID staffing, and continued strong demand on top of it. And so you've got higher than normal demand. This shows in the first 3 weeks of January where our in-stock position is. You want taller bars on the left side of this graph. So we're making progress. You're seeing that the bars on the right shrink, but it was certainly a challenge when we turned the calendar page. This is a chart showing taking out warehouse out of stocks. So those are the things we can't ship because we don't have them. This shows what we can ship. Again, promising progress over the last 3 weeks of getting taller bars on the left side of this graph, showing more in the stores. And we're continuing to show up, continuing to ship additional product and plan for that. Turnover is something that we're keeping an eye on. Employee turnover has increased, as it has with all employers right now. Full-time employee and turnover is much less than part-time employee turnover, and so we are taking some actions to try to get more stable workforce. Call-outs are something that have been a challenge, especially as the Omicron variant became more prevalent. What you see here is a spike in the number of call-outs. So that's an employee saying, I'm not coming into work today. When that happens, you have to close the store if you don't have enough people to operate. What we were finding is we were closing multiple stores every day unannounced. So this past Monday, we did reset our hours to noon. What that will allow us to do is use our existing manpower to cover fewer hours in the stores. It is more inconvenient for our customers, but we think predictability is better in this case to know that a store will be open at a certain time. What you'll see on the right side is we are trending down. I think, again, this kind of shows what's happening with Omicron. So I'm hopeful that we'll have fewer call-outs and we'll be able to maintain normal hours going forward.
Madam Chair,
Senator Peterson?
Travis, this is actually a really interesting graph because it's kind of in microcosm of what's happened with the larger economy and those of us that own businesses. So just for the folks, the folks that can't see at home, basically the call-outs kind of started ramping up immediately around Christmas, and it looked like it peaked about January 3rd and then sort of was level at a very high level until January 18, and now it's dipped down to about half of what it was as January 23rd. So that would seem to kind of track Omicron as it comes through our workforce.
Absolutely.
But this is very helpful, Travis, thanks.
Madam Chair?
Senator Marsden?
Thank you. Just quick question, Travis. Of all of our stores, how many are owned and how many are rented?
I think I'm going to say we own fewer than 20, I think, stores right now. And those are, typically we would own a store if it's been in our fleet for a really long time because we shifted a long time ago into leasing, or if we just couldn't find a store that we wanted to locate in a particular area. Usually we'll get the landlord to build it for us and we'll rent it from them, but if the landlord doesn't, then we'll own the property, but it's very few.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
This chart shows sales volatility over the entire pandemic. You can see the huge spikes that started at the beginning of the pandemic, and then the volatility just continued through. Higher growth than normal, but extremely volatile. What you'll see, again, in this July timeframe is sales growth starts to reduce. Volatility reduces, it starts to flatten, and it also trends down, and then you see that it fall off the table in December. I think it's a product of some out-of-stocks, but it's also, if you saw in the news, retail spending dropped about 2% in December as well. So we are part of that larger economy. We're seeing the impacts of what's going on in the larger economy. This pie chart shows kind of what's attributable to the growth in our sales. The primary factor last year was price. And what that means is it's how much people are paying for a bottle. Our suppliers haven't taken a lot of price increases yet. So what this is people trading up. It's premiumization. It's a person walking into a store who's thinking about buying a $25 bottle, but they say, you know what? I feel pretty good. My wallet's full. I'm going to buy the $30 bottle. That generates more revenue for us. What we're seeing now with inflation and consumers feeling that the economy is worsening is they're walking in and they might say, rather than that $25 bottle, I'm going to buy the $20 bottle. That is a reduction in revenue. I don't think our bottle sales will decrease. I think we're fairly inflexible in terms of what people buy. It's going to be a matter of what they pay for that bottle. And so I think if inflation stays high and people are spending on other goods, other necessities, the purchases at our stores will likely see a diminution in value.
Madam Chair? Thank you. Do you negotiate with distilleries on prices, or are they pretty much set with what they will do for you?
The way that we do pricing is they tell us what they'll bring at the wholesale price. Generally, what they do is target a shelf price, and then we apply our markup formula to that wholesale price to come to the shelf price. We will talk to them about, hey, if they're bringing a vodka, we'll say, we've got plenty of $25 vodkas. If you think this is a $28 vodka or a $30 vodka, that might make more sense for us in our product portfolio, and then they'll make that assessment on where they place it on the shelf.
Okay.
So additions to forecast for FY22, we did make adjustments to compensation. As an authority, we can depart from traditional state pay scales. What we found is we were having to do that in the retail environment and the distribution center environment in order to remain competitive. We also did a study in our central office facility where we focused on enforcement was a major investment for us, trying to catch them up to to market pay as well. So we made those adjustments. We've got the ABC property in there, the 14.7 million, as well as some additional COVID costs. We will be able to recover some of those from federal programs, but we can never count on full reimbursement, so we do
Right.
try to take that into account.
Sure.
In 23 and 24, we're showing full-year implementation of compensation adjustments as well as store salary growth and adjustments to looking at credit card fees increasing in the second year, as well as additional store openings and store growth going forward, and paying off projects or amortizing the projects that we've stood up the last few years. So that takes us to our Gaker forecast. What you will see is that due to what we're projecting is lower growth as well as higher expenses, you will see a dip in our profit forecast. We're thinking that it'll dip down to 190 in 23 and then start to climb again in 24 to 193 and then continue to go up from there. So it wasn't unexpected because of the projects that I walked you through earlier in this presentation to see that dip in profits. I think it makes it more substantial because of just how much growth we had the last 2 years to see that kind of that's growth slow at the same time that we're paying for those. But we think we're in a good position to continue to grow our business in the out years to make sure that we can maintain operations. So for the budget items before you this year, we are proposing an investment in e-commerce. Overall, the alcohol industry is seeing tremendous growth in e-commerce fulfillment. We think this is where we need to be because this is where our customers are going to want to be able to shop with us. It's going to take an investment in our website. It's also going to take an investment in our customer service because it's no longer providing that service at the store level. It's having someone available by phone or by email to be able to answer questions of a customer. I'm sure you all have had those interactions when you've ordered something online. You need to be able to talk to that person.
Absolutely.
Our old system of e-commerce is built on what's available in the store. So if something's not in the store, that person can't order it. We want to make our entire catalog available to folks. So that will require some changes in our e-commerce system going forward. We do think overall that this is additive to our profits. It's not just replacing store sales. It will grow revenue. We're projecting around $42 million over the 5 years, the first 5 years that it's implemented. So we're looking at about a $7 million one-time investment, about $1.7 million ongoing, but that will continue to generate additional revenues for us.
Sure.
We are proposing implementation of body-worn cameras for our field agents. This is becoming a best practice within law enforcement. We think it's good for the community as well as the officer to have that body-worn camera. And we're estimating needing one additional position there going forward with that implementation. We are projecting additional store growth. Generally, we open around 8 stores a year. That requires at least 2 full-time positions as well as part-time positions. We also have stores that grow in volume. When you have more sales, you need more employees in order to support those sales, so we are adding employees there. Something else that we're doing, we didn't add a lot of support to these stores. You'll see here we added 36 stores and over 1,000 employees since 2016. We didn't add any HR people. We didn't add any procurement folks. We didn't add anybody additional to support those stores. We need to catch up there and add some additional positions in order to support that growth going forward. And then we're also proposing conversion of some store clerk positions. These would go from part-time to full-time positions. Going to full-time gives us a more stable workforce. Fewer call-outs. It also gives employees an opportunity to grow their career at Virginia ABC. We love to see our employees come in as hourly or lower-level clerks, and they grow to store managers, regional managers. It's something that's unique to Virginia ABC and something that I think makes us special when we provide customer service. So those are our budget proposals going forward, and that's an overhead view of the facility under construction, but happy to answer any questions.
That was an excellent presentation, excellent. But I know that my committee still has questions, and I think I'm probably going to turn to, I think I heard Peterson first, and then I come back to you, Edwards.
Travis, first of all, excellent, and I've known you a long time, and you've done a great job with this agency, and frankly, I think you could have taken on more, but you are where you are. This headquarters, where is that? Is that in Hanover?
Yes, sir. It's off of Pole Green Road.
Okay.
And 295, so it is just off of 295 on that side.
Y'all didn't condemn any of that property, did you?
No, we purchased it outright.
Good.
And there is, if you look the upper right, upper right, there is a pad site for another facility, so they probably will build another distribution
Excellent.
center there. And so there's now a Sheetz located there, and we'll actually put a store on that the Sheetz is on the road front, and we'll have a store right behind that Sheetz for that area. When we were looking at it, it's an area that could use some
So you'll
additional
lease
service.
it to Sheets then?
No, Sheetz owns it. We just own our pad site. We own basically what's cleared aside from that pad site across from us.
Great, thanks.
Great. Senator Edwards.
Yeah, that was a good presentation, Travis. We appreciate it. The bottom line is we can expect $216 million to the Commonwealth in your net profits this year, 2022.
I think 2022 is over 200 million,
Yeah, 2022.
and then it's going to go down to about 190. About 15 million of that drop is the one-time hit from the sale of the old facility, and then it'll go back up.
Okay. The second question I have is license reform. This is speeding up the process and simplifying the process, is that right? Big picture?
I think it's certainly, the intent is to simplify it. Speeding up, I hesitate only because there are some statutory requirements in terms of posting periods of 30 days, so you can't accelerate that. A lot of it depends on where we see applications get hung up is when there's a back and forth where we say, hey, we need this from the applicant, and the applicant says, well, I don't have that, or can I produce something else? And sometimes that can take a little bit longer. I do think this system will help ease that and speed it up in the fact that you don't have to give it to an agent in real time. You can upload it. We can review it right there in the system. So that is the goal, to have it just more accessible. The back end is open right now, so we're using it to process. Applicants are still, and renewals are still doing it on paper. What we're doing in the intervening months is making sure that we roll out training and communication to our licensees so that they understand how to use the system most effectively.
So it should be
Edwards?
simplified, big picture simplification, right?
That is the goal.
Good, okay, thanks.
Madam Chair.
Senator Ruff had his hand.
Okay.
Next, and then back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Travis, thank you for helping me work through some issues with a small distillery in Virginia. We have distilleries all across the state that have invested and are hiring people and buying products in Virginia. How do you see them in the overall picture of the APC?
I think they're an important part because you will have folks who come to Virginia to visit sites, and they want to buy something, they want to consume something from Virginia. I know the Virginia Spirits Board has been established, and there's a bill to fund the activities of the Virginia Spirits Board, so there's going to be additional marketing and research to support Virginia distillers. Our role in that is frequently they see us as their first conduit to market. They want to be able to be listed in their state. We have kind of reduced listing criteria for Virginia distillers to make it easier for them to get into a Virginia ABC store. We will work with them if they want to first have things in their store or in stores around their distillery to make it accessible. We work with them to make sure they can get into that. What I would say, and what we worked on, this is a big facility. It's built to receive a lot of product. Our Virginia distillers typically are not mass producers of things. It is a much smaller operation. I think a gap in our rollout was making sure that we can account for the guy who comes with a U-Haul or even a pickup truck versus an 18-wheeler. And that's something that we're working to improve because I think they do have a role here, and then we work with them in partnership as best we can.
Chairman, I would just follow up and say, I appreciate that, but I think we need to bend over as far as we can to try to help them as they continue to grow.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Ruff. Senator Marsden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question from the virtual world. All right. Someone who's watching in about your efforts to fill current vacancies. The General Assembly provided more money last year to accommodate this. and they've had 2 compliance agent vacancies for 2 to 3 years. So if you could address the whole vacancy
Yeah,
issue.
that sounds like that's a manufacturer or a wholesaler. Compliance is a term we use for that level of the industry. Those are some more specialized positions. Recruitment of law enforcement officers overall is extremely difficult in this environment right now. Sitting with my chief of enforcement, we may have 50 applicants come through. We may get 10 that get to final selection. We may have 3 or 4 that ultimately get selected. It is a difficult process to fill. We are trying to make sure that we have resources throughout the state on that. And we're also looking at how to spread work between sworn and non-sworn personnel. I think we are going to need to be able to leverage non-sworn personnel and things that don't require the specific law enforcement training. I think we will always have sworn law enforcement. I think it's a benefit on public safety cases, investigation cases, forensic analysis around activities in the alcohol industry. But we're going to have to figure out that split. So happy to I don't know which region that is. You don't have to give me the name of the individual, but if we have the region, we can certainly look to make sure that we're properly staffing in that area.
Very good, thank you.
Sir.
Any further questions of our CEO for the ABC Board, who's done a wonderful job this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Really appreciate
Glad to do it.
your expertise is outstanding.
Thank you.
Well then, there being no further questions, we move on to the next speaker. Finally, we have the State Coordinator, Sean Talmadge.
Thanks, Charles.
You're going to provide an update on the Department of Emergency Management COVID-19 response, as well as your budget priorities.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman Lucas and Ranking Member Senator Norman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. And unfortunately, I'm not here to speak about kegs or the sales of alcohol or something fun like that. But another
Well,
very...
people had to do something while they were out for COVID to keep them going crazy.
That's right, and I've enjoyed working with Travis over the years as well. He's fantastic, and I hope to emulate his leadership as I enter my service as the 10th state coordinator for Virginia. I'm really excited about the opportunity here. Only 11 days on the job, but excited about continuing my service to the Commonwealth. So I'd like to introduce some of my teammates here from the agency. I've got Erin Sutton. She's the Chief Deputy State Coordinator.
Welcome, Aaron.
We also have Cheryl Adkins. She kind of keeps the place running. She's the Deputy State Coordinator for Financial Management
Thank you.
and our CFO.
Good morning.
And then also Dylan Taylor and Caitlin Barbieri, who lead our Government and Legislative Affairs team.
Welcome to each of you. We're glad to have you. Thank you.
So a quick introduction about myself. I am from a military family. I grew up in Northern Virginia, spent most of my grade years there. Then when my father retired from the military, we moved to Roanoke City, where I'm a proud Patrick Henry Patriot. And then onward to Blacksburg, where I'm a Hokie, graduating with an exercise physiology degree. My first, job for my career was, just over 2 decades ago in Hanover County, where I grew up in the fire EMS service, riding the ambulance and also the fire trucks there, and then into the National Guard active duty, where I supported emergency response here in Virginia. So that's my general background, and look forward to working with you over the coming years. Today I'm presenting on 2 major topics of interest of the subcommittee, an overview of the agency budget requests, along with an update on the Department of Emergency Management's responsibilities regarding the continued COVID-19 response.
Sure.
For FY23, our budget topped just above $120 million, and it's important to note there are 3 major funding sources for the agency, which is somewhat unique. While there's 11% general funding in our base, the majority of our funds come from special funding and also federal funds. And in terms of general fund budget requests, the proposed budget includes a total of 6 general fund requests for a total of $4.4 million over the 2-year budget. And I will review each of these in the following slides. First is our request for additional general fund positions, 10 additional FTEs, and the necessary funding to support positions that are no longer eligible for FEMA grant funding due to terms of the grant program. The positions are outlined in the second bullet there. Our core positions basically counts payable, logistical support, administrative, and also information technology. We are requesting to retain the non-general fund positions to address gaps identified through recent FEMA monitoring audits. And those redefined non-general fund positions would be supported using federal grants. It would be eligible under that program. And those are our core capabilities in emergency management, terrorism prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. We also have a request regarding our diversity, equity, and inclusion, our Office of Community Impact. And I think many of you would relate to this particular item. Over the past 5 years, more emergencies are occurring in smaller, under-resourced communities staffed by, for example, part-time emergency managers, and those communities face a number of challenges. FEMA recovery grant programs are difficult to navigate, placing these communities at a greater disadvantage as we assist in their recovery. This budget line item provides programmatic funding to address this gap in our under-resourced communities. And, recently it's, the county of Buchanan and the Hurley flooding, Nottoway and recent ice storms and the impacts to power, Tazewell floodings are just recent examples. So this item will provide the ability to better understand these communities and improve our ability to communicate, but also provide assistance by tailoring resources, including those with access and functional needs. Our next budget request is regarding our Virginia Emergency Support Team, or that is a membership of all of our state agencies, but also members of nonprofits in the private sector, and they really operate out of our Virginia Emergency Operations Center, or that facility. And we've learned the importance of our central coordination and synchronization hub that occurs over at the EOC. As the complexity and incidence of disasters continue to rise. We've seen a 91% increase in the number of state disasters in the last decade in comparison to the previous. This trend is straining state resources and our ability to sustain the support to our localities, and that's our primary mission. We're requesting 3 FTEs, and they'll be supporting planning, training, and exercises to maintain a high level of readiness for our emergency support team. Next is likely no surprise, probably a challenge for other state agencies, and that's just the increase in funding, increase in costs for vehicle purchases. And again, we collaborated with the Department of General Services using their vehicle cost calculator and the rate schedule. And the bottom line is these costs are to address increased vehicle costs over the next 2 years. Our next budget request is in regards to the Joint Information Center. The agency is responsible for supporting statewide disaster-related public information and community engagement. Unfortunately, there are no funding that's available to engage the public during blue sky days, meaning that we're losing the opportunity to engage the public before disasters occur, to provide education, awareness, instructions on how best to prepare for disasters. This also reinforces the means in which our public would communicate or learn instructions during an emergency to build trust between our communities and government regarding emergency response operations. And the services that are in particular for this funding gap are translation services, interpretation, and tailored communication for access and functional needs communities. Our next request is continuing funding for our personal protective equipment warehouse operation. And throughout the COVID response, we've recognized the importance of maintaining a disaster warehouse to store equipment and supplies in a ready state to support any emergency across the Commonwealth. This requirement has been a known gap for some time, and this funding will provide this important resource beyond COVID-19. Equipment stored in the warehouse would include sheltering supplies, incident management team equipment, search and rescue equipment, and emergency food and water and other supplies. And it's important to note that this is not funding for personal protective equipment, but for the warehouse itself, the facility. And our last general fund budget request is a lease of hazardous material training facility classrooms. As part of our nationally recognized statewide hazardous materials program, we maintain a training facility which provides training to our statewide first responders across the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, the current classroom storage and instructor spaces are well beyond serviceable life, and the funding here will support a capital long-term lease of modular buildings, providing us a little bit of flexibility there. Moving into a fairly brief review of our non-general fund budget request. As stated earlier, the agency is supported by a number of non-general and special funds. Over the 2-year budget, we are requesting additional FTEs that will be supported by a total of $5.5 million from those special and federal fund sources. Now I'd like to pivot to our second topic in the agenda, which is really a brief update and explanation of agency activities regarding the COVID-19 response. Operationally, we continue to support the Virginia Department of Health, state agencies in our localities with COVID-related supplies from our disaster warehouse. Our emergency operations team staff is fully integrated in supporting the Department of Health's effort in leading the management of the COVID-19. Second, we're also managing the FEMA reimbursement process for state and localities that are applying for federal reimbursement. And that's in regard to the actual COVID response. We have currently almost $1 billion in FEMA reimbursement requests that will be, there is no state share, there'll be 100% reimbursement from the federal government. And of that, about half, $546 million, has already been approved by FEMA, in terms of those applications. Right now, we have 257 applicants across the Commonwealth. Those are nonprofits, those are localities, there's local, school divisions and the like. And then the third thing that we are prepared to support any urgent situations which may present. And what I'm getting at is, if there is a surge that is overwhelming, we are prepared to step in and wrap logistical or coordination services in support of our localities and other state agencies.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on COVID-19. What are you all doing to make booster shots? And, I know most people that want a vaccine, if not all of them, have it by now, but what are you all doing to kind of get that out into the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So our agency specifically is reinforcing messaging that's coming out of the Virginia Department of Health, and then we are supporting Virginia Department of Health. They are leading those local vaccination clinics, and if they have any logistical concerns, they need additional supplies, we are prepared to support that. But right now, Virginia Department of Health is leading those efforts and coordinating that. And then, again, I see a role in the Department of Emergency Management to amplify that message and make sure that the localities know where to get the resource.
Senator Peterson?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So for VDEM, we are leveraging 6 funding sources to meet COVID-19 response and recovery requirements for a total of $382 million over the FY 2022 budget. Please note this includes both obligations and funding authorities. 92% are sources outside the state general funds. Since the start of COVID, we've been strategic in our financial decisions by expending those federal dollars first, and I'm happy to report we haven't even begun to expend state dollars until this month. So we've been at this response for 2 years, and we'll leverage that federal funds first, and now we're starting to spend down that 8% of general funds. It's about $32 million. And I'll discuss that strategy here on this next slide. We're requesting $32 million over the 2-year budget to support 3 main areas, and that's about $1.4 million for personal protective equipment, state share for the FEMA mitigation grant program. And following major disasters, FEMA does open up additional funding for mitigation projects, and there is a 80% cost share for those. And then finally, continued Emergency Operations Center requirements. And again, I'll review these in detail on each slide. The first is $1.4 million for personal protective equipment. That would include everything from gloves, a variety of different types of masks, cleaning supplies, and gowns. And again, that will be available for our localities and our state agencies. For our state cost share for COVID hazard mitigation program, we are actively planning and anticipating requirements to support our localities regarding FEMA mitigation grant applications. The cost share is a required 20%, and this funding represents that planned cost share. Projects are currently under development, and those awards will be decided by FEMA sometime in August of this year. The next is providing funding to support our Emergency Operations Center regarding COVID activities. And the budget item here will provide the necessary funding to maintain that response support from the Emergency Operations Center. While the funding is related to our continued response, I do want to highlight this also helps improve our readiness and preparedness to respond to other disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my brief, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I'm happy to address any questions the committee may have.
Sure. I want the committee to answer questions, but we're also 10 minutes away from Senate Finance meeting. And so we're gonna each have to move along, but I'm gonna go first to you, Senator Ruff.
One quick question. You said that there has been a major increase over the last few years of readiness or need of the department. What is the biggest reason for that?
Well, Madam Chair, Senator Ruff, we have seen a dramatic increase in the complexity and the incidence of major disasters. Unusual weather patterns, and just this pandemic response is a great example of very complex issues. And I can't explain why it's occurring. I just know from, over 2 decades of emergency management experience, we have to do a much better job to be prepared. We have to be prepared for changes in weather patterns because they'll change at the last minute. And so that's, it's a very challenging situation. We have to plan what most likely happens, but we're also seeing many last-minute impacts that require very detailed planning, coordination, and in support of our localities. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. Anybody have a short question on the committee? I'm sorry we didn't get to hear from you, but I'm sure we'll get to hear from you at another meeting. And if we didn't have to go down to Senate Finance like now, 9 minutes, we're on our way out. So if there are no further questions, the committee, Senator Peterson.
No, I didn't want to talk to you offline.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So the committee shall rise. And the staff will make a presentation at the next meeting.